Welcome back to my channel. My name's Valentina and today I'm going to be talking to you about my Poison Ivy cosplays. Now, I am kind of infamous for my Poison Ivy cosplays. That may sound obnoxious to say, but I do believe a lot of people do know me from my Poison Ivy cosplays. I have an extensive back catalogue of Poison Ivy cosplays, and I'd like to say, hand on heart, I think I was pretty much the first person to do the 4 seasons of Poison Ivy. There's a lot of variations that exist now, but I'd like to say I was the first person to tackle that. And yeah, we're going to kind of recap my Poison Ivy cosplays, how they sort of come about, which ones sort of come first, where the ideas come from. There's a lot of kind of backstories to them that you might be surprised to hear. Maybe not, I'm not sure, but I thought it'd be fun to sort of talk about my Poison Ivies as a whole. Like I said, they're costumes that so many people know me for, so why not give you some more insight into them? Maybe I'll tell you some facts about them that you didn't even know. Let's get to it. The first Poison Ivy cosplay to grace my body was actually the Summer Ivy, which is a latex bodysuit for those of you who haven't worked that out yet. Now, I don't think originally I was meant to wear this. It was sent to Justine-Louise photography via Kaoris Latex Dreams, and I think there may have been another model that was meant to wear it, but I ended up wearing it because obviously at the time I had red hair. It was just a case of doing my makeup to match. This was sort of my first time wearing a cosplay and shooting cosplay based content, and I was not prepared for how the release of the photos went, put it that way. They went somewhat viral and I was shocked at how much interest the photos themselves were getting. And yeah, it was really interesting. Like I said, I don't think originally I was meant to shoot it, but this was my first cosplay experience where I shot a cosplay and I was super pumped about the images and everyone online seemed to really like them. Yeah, it just sort of happened, and that's kind of where it all stemmed from. So that was my first cosplay shoot, which led to no end of cosplay shoots after that, but the first Poison Ivy and the first cosplay shoot. So my first cosplay shoot was Poison Ivy, and it was the first of many Poison Ivies to come. The Poison Ivy that come next was my Autumn Poison Ivy, and this has an interesting backstory. In my opinion, it's an interesting backstory. Now, the leaves that you see on this were originally meant for a burlesque act I had an idea for, and Ruby True gifted these to me one birthday because I had this vision to do an autumnal burlesque act. I thought all the orange tones would look lovely with my red hair, but I never actually got past the planning stages for this burlesque routine, and these leaves just sat in my craft drawer for the longest time. Now, move forward a few years, I obviously had just shot my Poison Ivy latex look and it had done really well, and I started to get into cosplay and do some research and started to attend conventions, and I was like, I'm going to MC in Birmingham. I'd quite like a new cosplay. I'd seen that Nicole Marie Jean had made an Autumn Poison Ivy, which I thought was absolutely stunning. So I credited her for the inspiration and created my own variation of this cosplay, which turned out to be one of my favorites. I think still to this day, I love the color schemes. I really love the photos that come from it. That's where the Autumn Poison Ivy come from. The leaves were just chilling from an old burlesque act that never made it out of paper into real life, and it was inspired by Nicole Marie Jean at the time. After both those leaf-based outfits, I decided to change it up a little bit and I went for an armored Poison Ivy next. Now, this cosplay was inspired by the fact I kept seeing armored Harley Quinns every time I went to convention. There was a huge moment in the cosplay scene where armored anything was a thing, like armored Pokemon Jinkers, armored Harleys, armored everything. You know, people were just sort of taking their own spin on characters and making them into armored versions, and I was like, hey, I've seen loads of armored Harleys, but I've not seen loads of armored Poison Ivy, so I decided to make my own armored Poison Ivy. And this was at the time when craft foam wasn't really a thing. Companies like Polyprops and stuff didn't exist. I literally used foam mats from Homebase and Helfords, and the print was still very much on the inside. So now foams obviously flap both sides because it's specific to cosplay, but at the time these foam sheets had like the crosshatch back and it was very uncomfortable, and in some shots from this shoot you can actually see what I'm talking about. I made this cosplay in a very low budget and it sort of slots in amongst my Poison Ivies. I just created this, like I said, because I saw a gap in the market. Armored Harleys were everywhere, armored Poison Ivies not so much. Had bright red hair. It meant I didn't have to wear a wig. It sort of was a test on my crafting skills as well, because I was obsessed with sort of learning the craft and the trade as I went along with cosplay. And yeah, Armoured Poison Ivy was born. After Armoured Poison Ivy had her moment, I moved on to create my Spring Poison Ivy, or what's now known to you as Spring Poison Ivy. Now, this also has an interesting backstory to it, I guess. This was originally meant to be a burlesque inspired Poison Ivy, and I was meant to be doing a duo cosplay with another cosplayer at the time who was doing a burlesque Harley Quinn, and they bailed at convention on me, so I was left with this burlesque Poison Ivy, which is fine. I actually really like the costume, but this is also why I don't really get involved with duo shoots and big group cosplays or anything like that, because this sort of thing normally happens. So I spent a lot of money making this cosplay. At the time I didn't really have a lot of money either, so that we could duo shoot and duo cosplay together, and it sort of all fell through. But I mean, it is what it is, and I still got a amazing Poison Ivy cosplay out of this. Now, these leaves were slightly different. They wasn't the Autumn Poison Ivy leaves. These leaves were other leaves that I'd bought off eBay just randomly and stuck to. Again, bra and pants. Added the tulle skirt, like made the skirt and stuff. Hand rhinestone it, added roses onto it. I was really pleased with how this cosplay come out, and obviously the main inspiration for it was burlesque at the time, but I then moved it into just coining it Spring Ivy to fit in with my Four Seasons, but its original inspiration was burlesque. I was meant to be doing a duo cosplay with a cosplayer in a burlesque Harley Quinn. This is where the original idea for this cosplay came from, and I mean, in hindsight, it doesn't really matter because it ended up being part of my Four Seasons collection, and it's been quite a popular cosplay over the years for me as well, so it doesn't really matter. But that's originally the backstory for that one. It was meant to be part of a burlesque duo, and it never happened. So if you've ever wondered why I don't really duo cosplay or group cosplay, it's for that reason. After realising that I pretty much had the Four Seasons down by coining the latex one summer, obviously I already had the autumn. If I changed burlesque Ivy to Spring Poison Ivy, I was just missing Winter Poison Ivy. Yes. So in steps Winter Poison Ivy, I made this one for MCM Birmingham again. I hand painted all of the autumn leaves white. Multiple layers of white paint went onto these leaves, and then I put glitter on them, and then obviously I stuck them down. Now, all of these creations over the time have been designed by me and pretty much made by me, apart from the latex. I didn't obviously make the latex ones, but all these cosplays have been made by me up until this point. And yeah, the Winter Poison Ivy was the first time I decided to paint the leaves and stick them to the outfits. I really liked the fur trim hat and cuffs that I opted for this look, and it went down pretty well at the convention. And it was just one of those things that I made to finish the collection, so I ended up having the Four Seasons of Poison Ivy. I've seen a lot of variations now of Winter Ivy, a lot of variations of spring, autumn, summer. It seems to be a thing now that Four Seasons of Ivy people do. I genuinely think I was the first person that did it. I could be wrong. If you know someone who did it before me, let me know in the comments, but I'm pretty sure I was the first person to do all Four Seasons of Poison Ivy, which has then obviously manifested into something a lot more since that point. But yeah, Winter Poison Ivy was literally an addition to complete the set, because I was like, hey, I've got the 3, I might as well add Winter in and do the 4, and then I have Four Seasons of Ivy, which become a thing for me. Like I was saying, Poison Ivy is sort of what I'm known for predominantly, and I believe it's because I did end up with the Four Seasons of Ivy, which is why I become known for Poison Ivy until I changed my hair from red. But I would still be cosplaying Ivy now if I hadn't. Winter Poison Ivy, that's why we ended up with that one. After completing the Four Seasons of Ivy, I actually took a break from cosplaying Ivy. Surprise, surprise, there's other characters out there and I decided to explore them, but I did end up coming back to cosplay Poison Ivy because of a sort of ongoing joke between me and DesPopart. Every time I was at a convention with him and I'd get changed out of my cosplay and go back to my stand, he'd be like, now you just look like a goth Poison Ivy. And it was sort of a running joke. It ended up being a running joke between us, and I one day just decided to make it for Halloween. I was like, hey, I'm gonna make this goth Poison Ivy into an actual thing because it sounds like so much fun. So I took the Autumn Ivy leaves. I had a lot of Autumn Ivy leaves. I really did. I've still got loads left now. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. I could probably do the Autumn Burlesque still with the amount of leaves I have. But I took the Autumn Ivy leaves, painted them black, covered them multiple times with layers of paint, stippled them grey to give them like that 3D effect, and began applying them to the bra and pants. You'll see a common theme here for the base of Poison Ivy because she doesn't really wear much else. Sometimes that's being generous to how she's drawn. I took the goth leaves, applied them to the bra and pants, added some accessories, and then Goth Ivy was born. This was just from a running joke between me and DesPopart, and I really love how it turned out. It was such a spontaneous cosplay from me. I made it in a couple of days, and it was just a lot of fun, and it was very popular at the time when I released it. And I enjoy cosplays like this when they're sort of organic. It sort of just happens, and then you shoot it, and then yeah, it's just a thing, you know, and Goth Ivy is just a thing now. My final Poison Ivy look is my Valentine's Ivy. Now, this was after I changed my hair from red to pink. I had to wear a red wig. I had always been used to just using my hair, so I felt very odd having to wear a wig for Ivy, and now I think of it, it was Valentine's Ivy anyway, so I probably could have just got away with pink hair. My Valentine's Ivy was again the autumn leaves painted pink. I painted them 2 colors of pink, put glitter on them, made them all cutesy, and then applied them to a bra and pants set again. I originally made a bodysuit Ivy because I hadn't had a bodysuit Ivy, but I hated the way it sat on me, so then I picked all the leaves off and put them on to separate bra and pants. This was the first time I opted for like pink tights as well. It was kind of more inspired by the 90s cartoon version of Ivy. Valentine's Ivy at the time was self-shot, so my lighting skills and camera skills wasn't that great, which is a shame because I do think it let the cosplay down, and I'd love to have another chance of reshooting it at some point. I don't think it had as much impact as I would have liked it to have, but Valentine's Ivy is the final Ivy in my collection, and I still think it's a really fun idea, and I'm still really happy with how my vision come to life, but I would at some point like to reshoot it, especially now I've come so far with like lighting and camera skills, and I've got like a wicked gimbal and that I can film cosplays with. It would be fun to revisit it at some point, but yeah, there's my Poison Ivies in a nutshell. There's a lot of Ivies, there's still room for more. I forever have cosplay ideas for Ivy. I just find her a really inspiring character. She has a lot of room for play, so to speak, and I don't know if there ever be any more Poison Ivy cosplays from me, but trust me, there is plenty of ideas for her in my notebook. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see me cosplay Poison Ivy again in the future. Like I said, I have a lot of ideas for her. It's just creating the funds to cosplay all the ideas and to shoot all the ideas in my head in general. Funds is always the thing that holds me back from that. If you do want to get involved in supporting future projects for me, do check out my web store. I do have that fans of only place as well, and I also have a fan house now too, and there's a Ko-fi page as well if you want to get involved in some cosplay projects moving forward. All the links below, and you can check them out in your own time. Again, there's no pressure, it just really helps me continue to keep creating and crafting and working on content that you all enjoy. Thank you if you've made it this far. I know it's probably a very long video, but I thought it'd be something that you guys might find interesting at the same time. I love Poison Ivy. She will forever have a special place in my heart, especially because she was the first cosplay I ever shot. She was one of the first cosplays I ever wore and made for convention, and she was the first cosplay that sort of went viral for me as well. Maybe there'll be more Ivy cosplays from me in the future. I don't know. I guess watch this space. All I can say now is thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video.